Okay, let's get into the world of commodities now for the next few minutes. Standard Chartered Bank said today that it expects oil prices to rebound sharply in 2016, with Brent crude touching a possible $75 a barrel. Standard Chartered's chief economist Marius Marathefis says at a press briefing in Manila, the Philippines, that a rapid decline in oil supply was likely to happen in the second half of the current year, as oil producers balance high production costs with hedges they use to cover price differential. The economist says his bank's oil price outlook takes into account Iran's re-entry into the market, which the lender estimated would add some 400,000 barrels a day to the global crude supply. The latest oil price expectation of between $70 and $75 by Standard Chartered aligns with Nigerian government's optimism that crude prices will rebound to provide enough cover for its 2016 budget oil price assumption of $38 a barrel. Meanwhile, the World Bank has cut its 2016 forecast for crude oil prices to $37 a barrel and foresaw other commodity prices to shed further this year due to weak demands from emerging economies. In its latest Commodity Markets Outlook report, the bank said the lower forecast reflects sooner than anticipated resumption of exports by Iran, greater resilience in U.S. production, and weak growth prospects in major emerging market economies.
Oil prices fell by 47% in 2015. A gradual recovery in oil prices is however expected this year, since the demand is expected to strengthen somewhat with a modest pickup in global growth.
On a conjectural basis, we do think that there is some overreaction in the oil market, in the sense that probably prices went a bit more down than one would have expected. We have examined all the reasons, and indeed there are many reasons why oil prices went down, but we could not, I would say, identify one single reason that pushed them so hard now.
The oil industry in North America has proven itself to be more robust than previously expected by continuing to pump despite the weaker prices. But the World Bank predicts there will be more production cuts in 2016. The report also examines the possibility of slower growth in China, which could lead to more downward pressure on the commodity market. It will affect not only the oil, but a whole range of commodities, which accordingly will hit hard on many African commodity exporters.
Africa is probably the region that it has been diversifying the less compared to the other regions of the world. So it relies a lot on primary commodities. And given that, as I said earlier, we see a decline in commodity price across the entire spectrum, it's going to face perhaps more headwinds than other regions of the world.
There are also concerns in the report about whether the intervention of the government to further support their farmers during this downturn could lead to even lower prices for commodities like maize.
Well, one of the things very difficult to predict is the weather. Now that's beginning to look like the price of crude oil. Today we've seen oil at $33, now we've seen $31 a barrel. Now we're talking about around 32. Now we have conflicting outlook on what crude oil will be in 2016. The World Bank said about $37 a barrel. Standard Chartered said about 70 to 75. Let's get some insight into this from the head of research at Financial Derivatives live here in Lagos, Nigeria, Damilola Akimbami. Thank you very much for coming. What do you make of this? It looks like one day everybody's coming up with different predictions.
Well, yes, everyone is coming up with different predictions, but if you look at it, the fundamentals are pretty much still the same. You are still having excess supply. We're hearing that U.S. crude inventories are increasing. And if you look at demand is still very, very weak. You're having a warm winter right now in Western countries, so the demand usually associated with this season is not there, and China is having its own issues right now. So if you are hearing talks about a possible production cut among OPEC and non-OPEC producers, is actually good news, and the market right now is
That is good news that Russia is talking to OPEC.
OPEC, yes, and the market right now is sensitive to information and data, so any whiff of a positive news would move the market.
After some time of everybody holding on to his own side of the room, as it were, it looks like they're coming back to the center together. Does that make room, therefore, for the Standard Chartered's forecast that we could see $70, $75 a barrel in the second half of the year?
Well, I'm sure they have their own reason for being that optimistic about oil prices. Well, we in FTC, we are looking about a range of $40 to $45 per barrel. And that's because production is still very, very high. So unless if there's a significant cut, and that's why if that production deal scales through, yes, everyone will be happy. But if that doesn't happen, I don't see oil prices recovering that significant. So there has to be something major that will move the market, and it's most likely going to come from the supply side, not the demand.
How correct are you guys that financial derivatives, you analysts? If you look at a chart today from Bloomberg, it shows that most of the oil-producing countries around the world, from Saudi Arabia to Norway, are all projecting 2016 budgets above the what you call the median price that we've seen for oil. So why is that so? Is it all about optimism that, look, we're just going to go above 30, they said 45, we could go to 50, perhaps 70 before December?
Oh, definitely, there's going to be a recovery, but it's going to be marginal, and it's not going to be a sharp V-curve recovery. So that's why you can see that most countries are actually projecting the benchmark price above $30, $35. But like I mentioned, we are looking at around 40, 45, and at that rate, if you do get prices or prices at that level, it's still something to think about. It's still something not to rejoice about, but we can still work with it. And a lot of countries' governments are actually already adopting belt-tightening measures. You can see that countries are removing fuel subsidies, they're increasing the prices of this and that. So everyone is now looking for how they can work with the current realities. So if you now maybe make a forecast that is way too high and then things fall below that, then it'll be a significant issue. So it's better to have a conservative approach. And if oil prices do get to 70, 75, that's great news. But I would still tread on the side of caution.
Cost is important here, Damilola, isn't it? Cost is important.
Yes.
For different jurisdictions, Nigeria, we know we have one of the highest costs of oil production around the world. So what should we be looking at? Should we be benchmarking against cost, or we should be benchmarking against what we think is the likely average price on the market?
Well, the thing is that most oil-producing countries are actually high-cost producers. You only have maybe the likes of Saudi and Kuwait that they have a cost per barrel that is less than $10 per barrel. And Nigeria has about 25. So right now, at the current price, we are still producing, or we still can record a yield of about maybe $7 per barrel. But the thing is, we're projecting $45 not just for a particular level. It's an average for the year. So obviously, what you should be looking at is not the current price, but your yield. So if oil prices actually do increase to 40, 45, and your cost remains constant at 25, then your yield will increase. So that is what the government should be focusing on.
I'm sure you're focusing on the Russia-OPEC conversation that will be coming very soon, isn't it?
Yes.
So should we hope for a weaker dollar to help push oil prices to higher level?
Well,
I'm not sure Washington will like what I'm saying, but
well, the thing is, fine, the dollar weakened yesterday against a basket of currencies, but I don't see the dollar weakening further. And if the dollar is stronger, obviously commodities priced in dollars are going to be more expensive. So what we'll be hoping for is that Russia and Saudi Arabia especially do come to some form of agreement, which could at least help prop up prices.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your time
for
coming
having me
on the program and keep those analysis. We'll keep all the figures on the board. Okay. Russia's oil output could see an increase in the coming year to protect the economy, with many companies looking to protect their market share as prices stay very low, leaving Russians divided over the effect that will have on their lives. According to the head of Russia's pipeline monopoly, Transneft, Nikolai Tokarev, Russia has decided to talk to Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries about output cuts to improve oil prices.
The comments by Nikolai Tokarev spurred a sharp rise in prices, with oil futures surging, which gave the first hint of possible cooperation between the top non-OPEC oil producer and the group in their efforts to reverse a record glut. But there's still a long journey from starting discussions to actual cuts by Russian oil producers, with many of them saying reducing output is technically very difficult and could lead to Russia losing market share to its competitors. Andrei Polishuk, an oil and gas analyst at Raiffeisen Bank, says Russia is likely to increase its oil output this year to protect its own economy.
What's the current production expected in 2016? Of course, our government wants to keep production as high as it possible. At the same time, Russian oil and gas companies plans to cut its investment programs in USD dollars, but in rubles probably it will be higher year on year. And some of them plans to maintain current level production, while some of them, part of them, plans to increase it. So, in my opinion, we should expect a minor increase in total output. Maybe growth rate will be about 1% or slightly lower.
Oil prices have fallen from around $115 in the middle of 2014, causing problems for Russia's cash-strapped budget and pushing the Russian economy into recession. Some members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, want coordinated output cuts to push up the price, and they have been pressing Russia to play its part. Polishuk says oil prices will remain volatile in the coming year, but expects an eventual rebound.
We expect that volatility will be high for long term, maybe for this year and probably for next also. But overall, we expect a rebound in oil price. The most important trigger for this year is a possible drop in non-OPEC production. Such producers have very high costs, and current levels are too low for maintaining the current level of production.
Transneft's Tokarev said a meeting of oil executives and government officials in Moscow on Tuesday had reached the conclusion that talks with OPEC were needed to shore up the oil price. Adding output cuts would be on the agenda for talks with OPEC countries. If discussions with OPEC begin in earnest, that would be a major reversal in Russia's stance. The Russian economy, which is heavily dependent on energy export, contracted by 3.8% in the fourth quarter of last year, mainly due to the falling price of oil amid an oversupply crisis. The economy is expected to shrink by 0.8% in 2016. Everyone lives in fear, the fear for their future. Of course, we all live in the same country, and of course we are trying to understand our government. But on the other hand, if oil prices fall, it is rather dangerous for the people. But other local residents in the city that lies along the right bank of the Ob River said they had not been affected by the economic crisis. Not yet, no. I have not personally felt anything so far, and I have no concerns. I believe everything will stabilize. Iran, previously kept from international markets by sanctions lifted this month, is also planning to increase its production rapidly into a world that produces 1.5 million barrels per day, more than it consumes, and has been running out of capacity to store it.
We'll be back after the break. Still around.